Okay, very good morning to you. I work with Action Rural Sussex, which may be known to some of you. It's a charity that's been operating with communities across Sussex since the 1930s. I've been invited by local residents today to come and talk about community-led housing, specifically community land trusts. The Sussex Community Housing Hub was set up at the turn of the year, and we're working with a whole range of groups across Sussex. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that as an introduction. The service that we provide is working with communities. It's funded and supported by 9 of the local authorities across Sussex, including Wilton District Council. Our role is to work with the groups, providing technical advice, support, and help in a range of ways to get things started, get things on the ground, and help to set up things on an ongoing basis. Our work is very much about trying to help communities to maximise the benefits of community-led housing locally, so particularly in relation to affordable homes, particularly in terms of rent, and also in terms of good design. It's a particularly important part of what we try to do in working with communities. Just by way of illustration,
Next one.
yeah. Community-led housing in the form of land trusts is fairly new to this country, so there aren't too many existing examples, but we are, as I've said, working with 20 groups across Sussex. There's some illustration there of the different groups that we're working with. Most noticeably Chillingly, obviously close to here, is a group that we're working closely with to get a development of some 12 homes going. Okay. In terms of community-led housing, well, what are we talking about? Essentially, there are 3 key aspects to the type of housing that we help to support, to reproduce. And that's very much about the community involved in the whole process, throughout the process, and that's not just the development stage, that's on an ongoing basis. The second element is taking a long-term role in terms of the stewardship and the management and the ownership. So the type of homes that we help to get developed are for community benefit in perpetuity, and that's another key aspect of the type of housing that community housing provides. Okay. Community land trusts, well, what are they? They are essentially not-for-profit organisations set up by local communities, typically covering a parish area. They can be larger, they can be smaller. They are organisations that own land and own assets, typically housing, but they can own also other assets. So, for example, in some villages, shops and pubs. So that's something else that the Land Trust can get involved in. They're defined in the Housing Regeneration Act 2008 and were given a significant boost in the last couple of years with the Community Housing Fund, which was given to a number of councils across the country. It's not the only source of funding, but a significant boost and encouragement by government, which has ended up with a situation that we now have well over 225 community land trusts across the country, over half of which are formed in the last 2 years. So it's something that's really taken hold in the last couple of years, and a lot of interest. As I've said, we're working right across Sussex with lots of different groups who want to take this approach. Okay. In terms of the added value, well, the added value, I think, in forming a land trust and operating on a very local basis is that you engage the community, you have local accountability, you have a local board, membership of the land trust by people in the community. It can be flexible to meet local priorities, so the nature of the housing, whether it's rented, shared ownership, shared equity, self-build, co-housing, it can be flexible to suit local circumstances. It's obviously about creating a situation where people have an ongoing say and influence. And it's an opportunity for people locally to get engaged and actually direct what you provide and how it works in the long term on a more on an ongoing basis. The other key thing, I think, for many communities is affordability. There's a lot of discussion about, well, what is an affordable rent, and it does help you to directly influence the sort of rent levels that you're providing through the homes that you're going to create. The other key opportunity is some of the land trusts have been very achieved well through working with local landowners and indeed working with developers. It is perfectly possible to work with landowners and developers to get land to develop. Sometimes a landowner will provide a small piece of land for a land trust. They might not provide it to a housing association or developer, but might work with a local community group. It's also possible to work with developers. There are examples where developers have worked successfully with land trusts providing pieces of land. So instead of building the affordable homes, maybe providing service plots, but also for a land trust perhaps to acquire the affordable elements of any new development, so they get involved. Just to conclude, a couple of examples of where it has worked. This is an example in Cumbria, and this particular community trust has been very successful in providing a range of housing, so both for rent, shared ownership, self-build, but also got involved in saving the local pub and through community share issues. There are a range of things that you can do with a land trust. Okay. And then finally, an example closer to home in West Sussex, where parish council have worked very closely with the community. A land trust has been formed. The land trust has worked closely with a developer, and there are now proposals for a 12-home development that's about to go into planning commission. Okay. And then final slide. Really just, it's quite a straightforward process. Our service is to work with community groups to form, develop the ideas, look at the opportunities, look at the particular model that might work locally. So this is not about saying this is how it works. There are a range of options, and our approach is to work with communities as to what's going to work locally, what type of housing you need, what sort of setup you need, and how do you go about that. The key thing I think to underpin it really is whatever you develop through a local group, it then gets formalised. The whole process has to very much involve community engagement and involvement throughout. It's not just the setup, it's the ongoing part of running a land trust. Sorry, final slide.
The fourth final
It's
slide.
really just, I just want to highlight the website address, just to encourage you to have a look, because that contains a lot more information I can give you in 10 minutes about community land trusts and other forms of community-led housing, but it also gives you examples of other parts of the country where it's successfully been delivered. I encourage you to have a look.
You could say that again, that's fantastic. Thank you. Graham's just talked about housing in villages. Fergus and his colleagues, who've left now, talked about housing in a village. But isn't the atmosphere different all of a sudden? There seems to be more of a welcome to that approach. So I think there's something really positive here about housing in rural areas that isn't creating the sort of tension that we felt sort of 20 minutes back. Can you explain, because we're here for the neighbourhood plan, can you explain how a neighbourhood plan can support this? What should we be thinking about as a neighbourhood plan group? We're not here to set up a land trust, but we're here to develop a planning document. What should the neighbourhood plan be saying to make things like this happen?
If you were able to get a site or sites at a sufficiently advanced stage where you know the site, you've got the funding, you've got the landowner's agreement, and everything's kind of lined up, ready to go, it is perfectly possible to have that referenced in the neighbourhood plan. Practical reality is quite often that isn't possible, so the way that it works generally is that if the community are supportive of the notion of a community land trust, then the encouragement would be to try and get at least some reference in the document to delivering the affordable housing locally through a community land trust. So it's kind of setting the tone as to how you would see the best way of delivering affordable housing locally.
Okay.
And that's quite often land trust and other ways of delivering.
Just to be clear, does a land trust, can it only operate if it has identified sites within its control? Or can it be set up and then start to look for those sites later?
Yes.
You can do the set.
It can be set up and then find the sites. Yes.
Okay. So here's an option for the plan. If this model did set up, and there are developers who have sites in mind, but are getting maybe pushback from the community, if they said, okay, we will the same site, but promoted through this model, there may be a more acceptance of that model. So they would have to relinquish their previously preferred model of maybe private sector led, but there may be a way that they can put their sites back in the mix, but under this. Is that something worth considering?
Yes.
How will they make their money?
Well, that's maybe the question to answer.
Well, basically they couldn't.
Well, they maybe just make less money. I don't know.
So how would he make the money?
So if the landowner wanted to maximise profit,
Yeah.
and they went down a sort of conventional development model, which is sell it to a house builder gets planning permission, off they go, they build big houses, and people don't really want to see that necessarily, so what is what we're hearing. But if they went through this model and delivered more affordable in a more locally responsive way, then they get a lot of kudos from the local community, but do they come away with less profit? It's the bottom line, probably yes, isn't it?
Two responses to that. First of all, if a landowner is prepared to provide land to a local community land trust, it usually is about that person being prepared to give up land and not take a profit on it or take minimal money out of it. So it's more about local community benefit rather than profit. The other way of doing it is if it is about selling land for development and profit, clearly through the planning requirement there's an affordable housing element that has to be delivered. It's perfectly possible to deliver that through a community land trust, and that's either the land trust purchasing an element through negotiation from the developer, as a housing association would, or negotiating with the developer for a serviced plot, so that the land trust then builds on that serviced plot. That's another way of doing it. You have to weigh up obviously the costs and benefits of either way of doing
And
it.
just on that last point, there's a brief discussion earlier this morning about self-build. Would those service plots possibly, would a land trust work with self-build type?
Potentially, yeah. If you could, but you'd have to do the deal with the developer, right?
Yeah. Coming back to the parish council response to the Wealden issues and options, and we said to Wealden, they own Little Broomy Lodge, which is next to the recreation ground here. As they own that land, it would be eminently sensible for them, because they're part of heirs, to work with you in terms of providing that site for the affordable housing that the parish council at the time realised we needed to provide. We don't need the other type of large properties, as we said all the way along.
Sorry, briefly, tell me which site this is that you
Yeah,
just
Little
mentioned.
Broomy Lodge. So if you look at the where the recreation ground is,
Yeah.
yeah,
So where we are now, isn't it?
that's right. If you go
West.
further west, that's it. That's the site.
That's the bonfire, isn't it, down there?
Well, that's where the Bonfire Society. No.
No, further west there.
Yeah,
Next to the allotments.
that's right. Between the recreation ground and the allotments.
Then you can see that contour line on top of the hill, don't you? Okay. So just because they're open, does it mean it's a good location?
What it is, it helps provide cohesiveness, and if you had affordable housing there next to the allotments, it made a lot of sense to the parish council at the time to be the sustainable development that we needed in the village.
So
We didn't need any other, but that would provide our needs for organic growth.
All right. How do you feel about that next to your garden?
Mixed feelings at the moment.
Can you imagine? Okay, we'll come back to that. I thought that was really helpful. One last, any quick question for Graham, and we'll move on. Yeah,
Just respond.
Sorry, yes, so let Graham come back on that.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the slides. It's a good example actually, because this is a combination of developer-owned land and parish council-owned land. In the instance of the parish council, the land was valued at about £250,000 plus. Parish had agreed to give the land trust the land for £1 to make it work, so that rent's coming out nearer to 60% of market.
Rather than 8%.
Yes.
So the parish council owned that?
Parish council owned a piece of the land, but they've done the deal with the developer, so the developer's offsetting the requirement for the affordable housing just over the road.
So essentially the parish council forfeited
Yeah.
£249,999.
But there's a community benefit in perpetuity.
And that was that on balance they went down that way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not all councils will take that approach, of course, but it's a good example of where it's possible.
Terrific. Very quick question, Diana.
I just want to know how these developments affected by SIL, because that puts considerable levy on to people who are doing self-build or buying small plots for development. Have you encountered any problems with that?
Not encountered any problems. I mean, it is particularly early days in Sussex because we're just getting a lot of these initiatives going. But it's a consideration.
Wealden have been notoriously difficult over SIL because they keep moving the boundaries. So that people who are trying to do small developments find themselves thinking they are either exempt from CIL or have got a certain payment, then find at a later date that their sole payment's been almost doubled. It's very difficult to get a direct statement from the CIL officer at Wealdon District Council.
The certainly self-build is increasingly popular. Many people are now registering with local authorities, expressing an interest, and a number of authorities we're working with are taking quite a proactive approach in trying to encourage sites being made available.
Okay, well, I've met that. Thank you very much, Brian.